Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. Today we're going to talk about the 10 or so books that most influenced me spiritually. And the way I chose these books are firstly from a range of different geographies across the world, so we can really get a diverse view of different teachings. And secondly, to cover different skills and disciplines, whether that be meditation, yoga, or psychic abilities. And thirdly, to cover different time periods, right from the very first books, thousands of years BC, up to today. Just a quick note on time periods is that I tend to find ancient books or really old books to be much more useful than modern books in spirituality. And the reason that is threefold. One is that they're less commercial compared to the books today. Second, it was much harder to publish books 100 years ago and certainly thousands of years ago. And so if you published something, you really had something important to say. And normally the books are dense with really useful information compared to nowadays where most books can be summarized in a paragraph. And lastly, ancient civilizations were, despite what we think, often very advanced in certain ways. You only have to look at the pyramids or Easter Island or Lake Titicaca to see how massive stones were quarried and cut to precision, which would be a difficult feat by modern standards. But certainly with meditation, you don't need technology to be advanced in meditation. It's something that you look within and develop within. So that being said, just one more caveat is that the books that are good for me may not be good for you. And that's simply because, well, for the same reason that one diet of food doesn't work for everyone. One size doesn't fit all. Everyone has different interests, different needs. And lastly, awareness. You may find that as you grow in your spiritual awareness, if that can be said, then you may interpret some of these books in a completely different way the second time or third time you read it. So just bear that in mind, because many of these books speak in symbology, and the more you develop, if that can be said, then the more you will become aware of the teachings hidden inside these books. And some of these books I reread many times for that exact reason. So, no more caveats or introductions. Let's dive right into the 10 books that most impacted me spiritually. And these books changed my life, so I really think they could change yours too. So the first one is, or the first place to start is yoga. And there are lots of, if you just Wikipedia yoga, I would recommend trying to read a lot of the original books and original authors. Swami Vivekananda is one of the most famous authors of the past, and he created this book called Raja Yoga, which is basically yoga of the kings, or I guess you can say queens as well. And this is really dense with really useful theoretical information about the structure of the body, the mind, the energy body, and so on. So this will give you a really good foundation into the fundamental structure of humans and how to improve yourself and your health. On the topic of yoga, a more practical, you could say, book is on Hatha Yoga by Selvarajan, Yesudian, and Elisabeth Haich. So Raja Yoga, I believe, was written around a century ago. I could be completely wrong in that. And this was Yoga and Health was written around the 1950s, 60s. So again, before yoga became really popular. And at the time, Elisabeth Haich had the largest yoga school in the Western world. And this book is just super practical. It's got lots of exercises, and it's not just the downward facing dog as you would find in lots of Western yoga studios, but it really focuses on connecting the breath, energy, and fundamental yoga positions to improve your health. And you don't need to have great flexibility, which I think is another big myth that modern yoga pervades. But there's also a really useful routine at the back, which I've been doing for a few years now, and it only takes 15 minutes to really feel fantastic with this book. So that's Yoga and Health. The more you study yoga, the more you will become aware of the inner chi, the life force energy, prana, and so on. And so that brings us to the idea of chakras, which are kind of the energetic gateways of your energetic field. And there's so many books on the chakras, many quite terrible ones if I'm honest with you, especially the modern books. And so I'd really recommend this book called The Chakras by Shafica Karagulla and Dora Kunz. There's two versions for some reason, but they're both pretty much the same, I believe. And Dora Kunz, or Shafica Karagulla, was a very traditional psychiatrist with quite a scientific approach, and Dora Kunz could basically see very physically people's energetic fields to a great level of detail. So this is a fantastic book, and I'd really recommend researching these two characters. This will really give you your fundamentals in chakras. And it's important to know about them because they form the fundamental structure of the human body. So, leading on from Shafica Karagulla, if you are skeptical about some of these topics or you have friends who are skeptical, I would thoroughly recommend this book, Breakthrough to Creativity. And even if you're not skeptical actually, but interested in psychic development, then this book kind of tracks Shafica's journey as a very traditional scientific psychologist in the 40s, 50s, 60s to working with lots of people with what she calls full sensory perception, which is essentially psychic abilities, or the siddhis, as they would say in Raja Yoga. This book is really amazing. It will really help you to understand the true capabilities of humans from a rational standpoint. This book changed my life, and I think it will change yours too. The next book, carrying on from Shafica Karagulla, is a collaboration when she worked with Viola, Petit, Neal, who had a PhD, I believe in mathematics, I'm not sure. I think she was a maths teacher. I love the intersection of spirituality and maths and science. And Viola Petit Neal in this book, she, during her sleep, goes to spiritual lessons and is taught by higher beings, goes to lectures, and they teach her very specific lessons ranging right from science, how the atom is made up, in terms of how the atom is really made, not some of the mistakes that science may be making today. So a lot of science is accurate, but not all of it. And this book really details the mechanics of that, the human body, the aura, the chakras, clairvoyance. This is the best book I've ever read for really going into the mechanics of psychic abilities and the human body and the world. This book contains lots of secrets, I would say, that if everyone knew, the world could massively, fundamentally change. I don't know if for that reason it's out of print and it cost £300 on Amazon. And when I bought it for, I think, £150, £200 off Amazon, I must say the person online put the book back up for sale right away. So it feels like someone's kind of throttling supply. Very strange and mysterious. But you can find a PDF copy for free online, and it is available in some libraries. So, yeah. This is... I reread this book almost on a weekly basis. I keep it by my bedside and I just read certain pages over and over again, because it's one of those books that you keep discovering new knowledge as you read the kind of symbology embedded within it. So I don't know what to say about this book. It's just incredible. So we need to know about our auras, our etheric fields, and our energy bodies. And probably, again, there's lots of information about this nowadays, but most of the books are pretty terrible. But in the early 20th century, the early 1900s, the Theosophical Society published Phoebe Bennett, and some of her books include The Etheric Body of Man and Man Incarnate, which is a wonderful old book. And Phoebe was one of the most renowned psychics and clairvoyants of the early 1900s. And that whole period had some awesome psychics. Annie Besant, Helena Blavatsky, and the Theosophical Society was really awesome back then. So do check out that whole era, but these are fantastic books to really understand the human aura. And yeah, Phoebe could really detect that at a accurate level. And again, I believe either her or her husband was at Cambridge University, so they come from very well-to-do scientific backgrounds. Back then, a lot of these books came from people who were quite advanced in traditional disciplines as well. So it's only more recently that spirituality has become kind of like a hippie thing, which is fine too, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be rigorous and scientific as well. So speaking of being scientific, that leads us very nicely to Rudolf Steiner, who was also part of the Theosophical Society, but later broke away from it after Krishnamurti was kind of announced as their leader. But Rudolf Steiner created a discipline called anthroposophy, and the whole idea was to mix science and spirituality, and I actually think he did a really good job. And his teachings are, again, just really specific, not airy-fairy, but also super advanced in terms of the structure of the chakras, how that impacts your energy, how to develop your clairvoyance, and so on, clairaudience and whatnot. So yeah, this book is super powerful for your own spiritual development, and all of Rudolf Steiner's stuff has a very rational Western perspective on things. So we mentioned Elisabeth Haich earlier. Elisabeth Haich is I don't know how to describe her really, but she's just amazing. Her flagship book, Initiation, is about her and her past lives and the process of initiation, which is what the ancient Egyptian initiates and priests went through to essentially ascend or become enlightened. And it's still a process that's available today, in my view. But this book, again, completely changed my life. It's incredible. It contains it's not just a kind of story book, but also contains lots of amazing teachings and facts about really kind of not scientific, but geometric disciplines. So yeah, this book changed my life, and it's such a good read. If you have an ancient Egypt kind of connection, would really recommend this book. So no list of books would be complete without a recommendation for energy healing or generally spiritual healing. And so the two books that I'd recommend are one by Dora Kunz, which we mentioned earlier. This is called Therapeutic Touch, and it was written in collaboration with many professional doctors and PhDs. and is used throughout America and endorsed by a lot of very traditional bodies. So it was a tremendous achievement by Dora Kunz. And it's a great discipline, Therapeutic Touch. The other one I'd probably recommend is Quantum Touch, which is pretty similar, different author, and you can buy the book. I don't have it here. I have it in my Cambridge, in my parents' home. But very easy to read the book and utilize the disciplines right away. Everyone should have some grounding in some healing discipline. Speaking of disciplines, I thought it would be worth chucking in some Astral Projection. So this book by Robert Bruce and Brian Mercer, in my opinion, at least in the early 2000s, was the kind of flagship workbook for Astral Projection. And it's a 90-day guide. It's super practical. It's kind of like a diary-like workbook. And if you work through it, I'm pretty confident you will astral project. Different people are more disposed to this than others, depending on the way your energy bodies are structured. Of course, particularly your astral body. But anyway, this is a just really practical, fun book, and thoroughly recommend just trying it out. Also check out the Monroe Foundation, and Robert Monroe was probably the kind of father of modern astral projection. Lastly, in terms of just really fundamental spiritual fundamentals, I would probably be remiss if I didn't mention the Cabalion. This just contains the fundamental principles of spirituality. I think that it's kind of I don't know, it's just a list of fundamental principles, and a lot of people say after they read it that they get a lot more synchronicities and it kind of changes the way they think. I'm only a small way through it, I must admit, so I'm not so sure myself yet, but I think it's got to be mentioned. So yeah, those are the 10 or so books that I chose that had the biggest impact on me. Probably some special mentions I want to also add is, in terms of fundamental spiritual principles, this book, The Teachings of Osiris, I'd really recommend. Super easy to read, written in the early 1900s, where Osiris is channeled by this guy Randall Stevens, who's really funny because he's like, again, super rational, ex-military, I think, and he's just shocked that he can channel these beings. But the teachings are super practical and really, really deep and useful. So Teachings of Osiris, and Back to the Future for Mankind. This book is mental, and this book is a massive contribution to the world and society. This book, if everyone read this, can literally change the world. So it's written by an architect. His name is Ibrahim Karim, PhD. He's worked with many governments, and it's all about the quality of biogeometry is a language of quality, and it's a way to measure the quality of shapes, the energetic impact of shapes. So I think he calls it a design language. Essentially, every shape has an impact on us, and the way the world is designed can impact and does impact our health. And he has a quantitative way to measure that through principles of radiesthesia, which is a whole discipline in itself. And basically, if you understand these disciplines, you can arrange the world around you in such a way to massively benefit your health, creativity, and success. Hard to really describe, but just a really important book. Yeah, in terms of geographies, would recommend the writings of Max Friedem Long. He focuses on the Huna society from ancient Hawaii, and they have lots of teachings which are very similar to ancient Egypt and yoga disciplines and so on. And speaking of yoga, I should probably mention the SIx Yogas of Naropa, which is also an important piece in yoga, which I'm still reading, by the way. But I haven't mentioned so much disciplines around Taoism and Zen Buddhism, just because I haven't read that area so much myself yet, but I do intend to, and I'll bring those learnings to you as soon as I can. But for now, thank you for listening. If you read some of these books, they will really, really change your life, I believe. At least they did for me, and some of them just shifted me on a completely different course for the better. So yeah, they're just so good, and I'd love if you would let me know any books that have massively impacted you as well, because if I can continue to read such books, it's always really exciting. So enough said for now. Much love, and more videos to come very soon. Just drop me any questions in the comments if you would like. All the best. Bye.